My name is Maggie. I am 69 years old, and on the day my husband's will was read, my son Marcus divided $50 million for himself as if it were a birthday gift. He got the Medical Supply Corporation, the real estate, the luxury cars, everything. And I, after 45 years of devoted marriage, after sacrificing my entire life for that family, received only an old envelope that looked like trash. My daughter-in-law Vanessa laughed right in my face. Marcus didn't even look at me. Humiliated and shattered, I walked out of that lawyer's office feeling like my life was worthless. But what they didn't know was that tonight, when I opened that despised envelope in the solitude of my home, I would find something that would change everything forever. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. Robert had died just a week ago. Lung cancer took him in 6 cruel and painful months. For 45 years, he had been my partner, my refuge, the man who built an empire from nothing, working day and night in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was always by his side. When he stayed up until dawn reviewing contracts for Thornton Medical Supply, I brought him coffee and stayed awake waiting for him. When banks wouldn't lend him money to expand, I sold the jewelry my mother had given me to help him get the capital he needed. I still remember teaching Marcus to ride his bike in our Myers Park garden when he was 7. He would draw birthday cards for me every year with the words, "To the best mom in the world," written in crayon. Robert used to say, "Marcus has your heart, Maggie. He'll take care of you when I'm gone." How wrong we both were. The reading of the will took place at a law office in uptown Charlotte. I arrived early wearing my best violet dress, the one Robert had given me on our last anniversary. I thought it would be a formality. After half a century together, it was logical that my husband would have left me protected. The lawyer began to read in a cold, professional voice. To my son, Marcus Thornton, I leave the Thornton Medical Supply Corporation, valued at $35 million, plus commercial real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and luxury vehicles. Total value, $50 million. Marcus smiled like he had just won the lottery. Vanessa squeezed his hand, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "And for Margaret Thornton," the lawyer continued, "I leave this personal envelope." She handed me a yellow, dusty envelope that looked like it had been stored for years in some forgotten drawer. I took it with trembling hands while Marcus and Vanessa exchanged satisfied glances. Vanessa couldn't contain herself. "At least you can frame it, mother-in-law. Maybe put it on your mantle as a souvenir." Marcus didn't even look up from the documents he was reviewing. He sighed, as if my very presence in that leather chair was an annoyance to be tolerated. The lawyer closed the folder and turned to Marcus to explain the legal procedures for taking possession of his inheritance. They talked about wire transfers, corporate structures, and tax implications, as if I wasn't there, as if I were a ghost. I stood up slowly, put the envelope in my purse, and walked to the door. No one said goodbye. No one asked if I needed a ride home. I left that office with a broken heart, walking through the streets of Charlotte where I had lived my entire adult life, where I had built a family that now treated me like garbage. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. That night, sitting in the living room of my empty house in Myers Park, with silence weighing like a tombstone on my shoulders, I decided to open the envelope. My hands trembled as I broke the yellowed seal. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. I unfolded it slowly and recognized Robert's unmistakable handwriting. That elegant script I had seen in thousands of love letters during our courtship, on birthday cards, on notes he left me in the kitchen before going to work. But this time, the words took my breath away. For the woman who always truly loved me. Below that, a bank account number, Swiss International Bank, Geneva, and below that, a line that made me tremble. "What you find here is only the beginning. He didn't deserve to know the truth, but you do." A Swiss bank account. What was Robert talking about? For 45 years of marriage, he had told me everything about his business. Or so I thought. What secrets had he kept? What truth was it that Marcus didn't deserve to know? I stayed up all night, tossing and turning in bed with that piece of paper clutched to my chest, my mind a whirlwind of questions. The next morning, my hands were still shaking as I dialed the number for Swiss International Bank. My English felt uncertain as I spoke to the operator. I gave her the account number and my personal information. After a wait that felt like an eternity, I heard the words that would change my life forever. Mrs. Thornton, the current balance in your account is 400 million United States dollars. 400 million. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the kitchen floor. I sat down right there on the tiles, trying to process what I had just heard. $400 million, 8 times what Marcus had inherited. More money than I had ever imagined existed in our lives. Robert had left me a secret fortune, a fortune that no one knew about, a fortune that made the 50 million from the official will look like pocket change. But that wasn't all. The operator's voice came through the phone on the floor. "Ma'am, are you still there? We also have instructions to courier you a safe deposit box that your husband deposited here 2 years ago. We can schedule delivery for tomorrow morning if that works for you." I picked up the phone with trembling hands and accepted. The courier arrived the next day at exactly 10 in the morning. It was a small but heavy safe with a combination lock. The numbers came in a sealed envelope. June 15th, 1980, our wedding date. Typical of Robert, always so romantic, even in his darkest secrets. I closed the living room curtains, unplugged the phone, and sat in front of the safe with my heart racing. I dialed the combination and heard the click of the mechanism opening. Inside were documents, photographs, letters, and a thick envelope with my name written in large letters. I opened it with trembling hands and began to read the most shocking letter of my life. "My dearest Maggie," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means I have passed away and our son has shown his true colors at the reading of the will. I know he humiliated you. I know he treated you like trash. I know Vanessa laughed at you when they gave you that dusty envelope. But I needed it to happen this way. I needed him to show who he really is before you knew the truth." During the last 2 years of my life, I discovered things about Marcus that broke my heart. Things you do not know. Things that forced me to make difficult decisions. The $400 million you found in the Swiss account are only part of my real fortune. There is more, much more. But before you know everything, you need to know the truth about our son. My world swayed. What truth? What had Robert discovered? I continued reading, my soul on edge. Marcus is not the successful businessman he appears to be. For 4 years, he has been a compulsive gambler. He owes over $4 million to loan sharks, who are not exactly understanding people. He has mortgaged properties, taken illegal loans, and destroyed his credit trying to feed this addiction. The documents proving all this are in this box. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. But the letter continued. To cope with the stress of his gambling debts, Marcus turned to cocaine 3 years ago. He has been hiding this addiction from everyone, including Vanessa. He has secretly sold company assets to finance his habit. But the most serious thing, Maggie, is what he did to our business and to innocent people. Marcus has been stealing from Thornton Medical Supply for 3 years, nearly $5 million siphoned through fake invoices and ghost accounts. But worse than the theft, he made a decision that cost lives. To increase his profits and get more money for his debts, Marcus signed contracts with a Chinese supplier selling substandard medical equipment. Cheap ventilators, defective monitors, faulty surgical tools. He knew they were below safety standards. He knew they could fail, and they did. 2 patients died at a small rural hospital that trusted our company. 2 innocent people lost their lives because our son wanted to save money and pocket the difference. The families sued, but Marcus used expensive lawyers to shift blame to the hospital. He escaped legal consequences, but the blood is on his hands. The documents, the contracts, the hospital reports, they are all in this box. Tears began streaming down my cheeks. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen that my son was destroying lives? But Robert's letter wasn't finished. There is more, my love. Marcus has been using company trucks to transport cocaine for a drug cartel. He's not just an addict. He is a criminal working with dangerous people. They are blackmailing him for $750,000. If he doesn't pay by the end of the year, they have threatened to kill him. But what hurts me the most, Maggie, is what they plan to do with you. I heard them talking one night in my study. They thought I was asleep from the medication, but I heard every word. Marcus told Vanessa that when I died, they had to get rid of you as quickly as possible. Vanessa suggested they declare you mentally incompetent and have you committed to a nursing home. Marcus said it would be easy to get a doctor to sign the necessary papers. I found the contract. They have already paid a deposit to commit you to a place called Pinehurst Senior Living, 2 hours from Charlotte. The contract is dated 3 weeks before my death. They plan to lock you away before I even died, Maggie. They plan to rob you while you were mourning at my funeral. And in one of the recordings I made, I heard something that chilled my blood. Marcus said, "Once she is in that facility, we will make sure she gets the right medication. She won't last 6 months. The paper grew damp with my tears. My own son, my own flesh and blood. He had not just planned to rob me, he had planned to kill me. That is why I made the decision to protect you," Robert continued. "That is why I moved the bulk of my fortune to accounts only you can access. The $400 million are just the beginning. There are commercial properties in Atlanta, Miami, and Nashville, investments in medical technology startups, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, gold and precious assets stored in secure facilities. In total, more than $400 million that are now yours, and yours alone. But I also leave you something more valuable, the truth. And with that truth, the power to decide what to do with our son." My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the letter. Robert's final words were seared into my soul. You decide whether you use this information to protect yourself or to teach him a lesson he will never forget. I can no longer take care of you, but I have given you the weapons to take care of yourself. With all my eternal love, Robert. I put the letter down and looked at the contents of the safe. Photographs of Marcus snorting cocaine in a nightclub bathroom, bank documents showing his debts to loan sharks, contracts signed with the cartel, casino receipts for tens of thousands of dollars, the contract with the Chinese medical equipment supplier, hospital reports documenting the 2 deaths, email exchanges where Marcus deflected blame, the signed contract with Pinehurst Senior Living, and small recording devices I didn't dare listen to yet. My husband had been a private detective during his final months, meticulously documenting the corruption of our own son. I sat in that room for hours, surrounded by evidence that destroyed the image I had of my child. The son I knew died long before I read that letter. I had been mourning a ghost. But what hurt most wasn't the addictions or the debts. It was knowing that my son's greed had killed innocent people, and that he had planned to kill me too. Over the following days, the phone calls began. Marcus would call using that fake, concerned voice he used when he wanted something. "Mom, we need to talk. Vanessa and I are worried about you. You've been very quiet since the funeral. It is not good for you to be alone in that big house. We've been thinking about options to make you more comfortable." There it was. The plan was beginning to unfold. "What kind of options?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Well, there are some very nice places where you can have company, activities, 24-hour medical care, places where you do not have to worry about maintaining a house or cooking or any of those burdens. Places like Pinehurst Senior Living," I thought, feeling rage begin to boil inside me. That same afternoon, Vanessa showed up at my door unannounced, carrying glossy brochures. She walked through my living room as if she already owned it, spreading the pamphlets across my coffee table. "Look at these beautiful gardens, Mother Maggie. They have art classes, movie nights, even trips to museums. You would be so happy here." She pointed to photos of smiling elderly people in a dining hall. "And you would not have to worry about this big empty house anymore." Marcus called again the next day. Mom, at your age, changes are complicated. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to adjust. It is better to act fast, get settled somewhere safe before winter comes. At your age, as if I were a senile old woman incapable of taking care of herself, as if 69 years of life had stripped me of all competence and dignity. But I said nothing. I played along. I pretended to consider their suggestions while my mind worked on something else entirely. I had $400 million. I had proof of their crimes. And I had something they had underestimated: 45 years of experience being the wife of a brilliant businessman. I had learned more than they thought. I had absorbed more knowledge than they imagined, and now it was time to use all of it to my advantage. On Wednesday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find an elegantly dressed man in his early 60s carrying a leather briefcase. Mrs. Thornton, I am George Maxwell, attorney at law. I am here on behalf of your late husband. I have specific instructions to carry out. May I come in? I led him to the living room, my heart pounding. George sat down and opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder of legal documents. Your husband asked me to deliver these to you exactly 1 month after his death. Mrs. Thornton, what I am about to tell you will surprise you. Robert was very meticulous. These contracts grant you 51% of the shares in all the family businesses. On paper, your son inherited control of Thornton Medical Supply, but legally, you are the majority shareholder. My head was spinning as I tried to process the information. How is that possible? The will said Marcus inherited everything. That will, George interrupted, only covered the visible assets. Your husband created a complex corporate structure. All the companies operate under the umbrella of a family holding company. And you, Mrs. Thornton, are the owner of that holding company. Your husband was playing chess while everyone thought he was playing checkers. He built a perfect legal trap disguised as a generous inheritance for your son. George opened another folder. But there is more. Your husband also tasked me with investigating Marcus's activities for the last 3 years. What we discovered is enough to completely nullify his inheritance, and in some cases, to initiate criminal proceedings. He showed me documents I'd already seen in the safe, plus new evidence: irregular bank transfers, fraudulent contracts with the Chinese supplier, fake invoices from shell companies. Marcus has been diverting funds systematically. In total, he has stolen nearly $5 million. Then George took out an audio recorder and pressed play. I immediately recognized Marcus's voice. When the old lady is locked up, we can liquidate everything and get out of the country. With 50 million, we can start fresh in Europe. Nobody will ask questions there. Vanessa's voice replied, "What about the police? By the time they figure it out, we will be long gone. We will have new identities, new lives, and she will be safely tucked away, where she cannot cause problems." My blood ran cold. They were not just planning to rob me, they were planning to flee the country after destroying everything Robert had built. George stopped the recording. Your husband recorded this conversation 3 weeks before he died. That is why he accelerated all the legal preparations. He knew he had little time to protect you. He handed me a new cell phone. This device is directly connected to my office and to the police. If you feel threatened at any moment, press the red button and help will be on the way immediately. The reality of my situation began to sink in. I was not just dealing with an ungrateful child. I was dealing with a desperate criminal who saw my death or disappearance as the solution to all his problems. "What do you recommend I do?" I asked George. He smiled, though the expression did not reach his eyes. "Your husband asked me to tell you this verbatim. Maggie, you are stronger and smarter than they think. It is time they found out who they are messing with." That night, after George left, I sat in front of my bedroom mirror and truly looked at myself for the first time in months. I saw a 69-year-old woman with gray hair and wrinkles that told the story of 4 decades of smiles and tears. But I also saw something I had forgotten existed: fierceness. For all those years of being the perfect wife and selfless mother, I had buried the fighter I had been in my youth. The woman who had sold her jewelry to help Robert build his empire. The woman who had worked double shifts when money was tight. The woman who had fought against banks and competitors to protect her family. That woman was still there, dormant but not dead, and it was time to wake her up. The next morning, I began my counterattack. First, I called the Swiss bank and transferred $10 million to a local account in Charlotte. I needed immediate liquidity for what I had planned. Next, I hired a private security firm to watch my house 24 hours a day. If Marcus planned to speed up my commitment, he was going to meet more resistance than he expected. I also hired a forensic accountant to audit all the family businesses. I wanted official documentation of every penny Marcus had stolen. Finally, I visited 3 different criminal defense attorneys and gave them copies of all the evidence I had against Marcus. I wanted to be prepared for any scenario. I researched Pinehurst Senior Living online. The reviews were horrific. Complaints about medical negligence, terrible food, abusive staff members. A perfect place for someone to slowly disappear from the world. That night, alone in my house, I made a decision. I was not going to be the silent victim they expected. I was not going to let them lock me in a nursing home while they stole everything Robert and I had built together. I had $400 million. I had proof of their crimes, and I had something they had completely underestimated. If they wanted to play chess, I would show them what a queen could do when she finally claimed her power. Marcus showed up at my house unannounced on Friday morning. He was accompanied by Vanessa and a man who introduced himself as Dr. Harrison, a specialist in geriatric medicine. The plan was in motion. "Mom," Marcus said with that fake smile that now nauseated me. "We brought the doctor to give you a general checkup. We just want to make sure you are okay." The supposed doctor carried a black briefcase and had a condescending attitude that made my blood boil. "Mrs. Thornton, I just need to assess your cognitive state. These are routine procedures for someone your age." He took some forms from his briefcase, and I recognized them immediately. They were the same documents George had shown me, the ones used to declare someone mentally incompetent. "Can you tell me what day it is today?" he asked. "Friday, November 10th. I replied calmly. "Can you tell me where you live?" "In the house I built with my husband 30 years ago at 2847 Queens Road in Myers Park, Charlotte, North Carolina. Do you remember how much money you inherited in the will?" There was the trap. "I remember perfectly," I replied, looking directly into Marcus's eyes, "that my son inherited $50 million in companies and properties. I also remember that I received an envelope that you all considered trash." Dr. Harrison scribbled something on his papers. Marcus smiled, thinking I had fallen into his trap. "And how do you feel about that distribution?" the doctor asked. "I feel," I said slowly, "like a woman who finally understands who the members of her family really are." Jessica and Marcus exchanged satisfied glances. They thought I was admitting confusion or resentment. "Mrs. Thornton," the fake doctor said, closing his folder, "I believe it would be beneficial for you to spend a few days under medical observation. We have a very comfortable facility where you can rest while we evaluate your general condition." There it was, the final trap. "No, thank you," I replied with the firmest voice I could muster. "I feel perfectly capable of taking care of myself." "But Mom," Marcus said, and for the first time there was a real note of threat in his voice. "It is not a suggestion. The doctor believes you need specialized care." Vanessa approached me with that venomous smile. "Mother-in-law, do not be difficult. We all know you cannot take care of yourself anymore. It is time you accept reality and let the adults make the important decisions." The adults? As if I were a child. As if 45 years of marriage and building an empire had taught me nothing about life. I looked at Marcus, at Vanessa, at the fake doctor, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. It was a smile they had never seen before, a smile that would have made Robert proud. "You are right," I said softly. It is time for the adults to make the important decisions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. I took out the cell phone George had given me and pressed the record button. I want to be very clear about what is happening here. My son Marcus, my daughter-in-law Vanessa, and this supposed doctor are trying to force me into a facility against my will. The fake doctor immediately grew nervous. "Ma'am, this is just a routine medical evaluation." "Routine," I answered, keeping the phone pointed at them. "Is it routine to come to my house unannounced? Is it routine to bring commitment papers already filled out?" "I am talking about the gambling debts, Marcus. The $4 million you owe to loan sharks." I pulled one of the photographs from my purse. "This is you leaving the Diamond Casino at 3 a.m, clearly intoxicated, with two men who are obviously not legitimate businessmen. I am talking about the money stolen from Thornton Medical Supply, nearly $5 million over 3 years through fake invoices and ghost accounts. But that is not even the worst part, is it, Marcus?" I pulled out the hospital reports, my voice shaking with rage. "I am talking about the substandard medical equipment you sold to rural hospitals. Equipment you knew was defective. Equipment that killed people. 2 patients died, Marcus. 2 innocent people lost their lives because you wanted to save money and pocket the difference. A 62-year-old grandfather who could not breathe when your cheap ventilator failed. A 45-year-old mother of 3 whose heart monitor did not detect her cardiac arrest in time. Their families are still grieving, and you used your expensive lawyers to escape justice. You call killing people business?" Marcus turned pale. "You do not understand. It was not my fault the hospital should have checked." "Not your fault," I repeated, feeling decades of suppressed anger finally find its voice. "You signed the contracts. You approved the suppliers. You knew they were substandard." And then I pulled out the photographs of Marcus in the nightclub bathroom, the white powder visible on the counter. "And let us talk about your cocaine addiction. 3 years of using company resources to feed your habit. Using company trucks to transport drugs for a cartel. You are not just an addict, Marcus. You are a criminal. But the thing that disgusts me most," I continued, my voice breaking, "is this." I held up the contract with Pinehurst Senior Living and played the recording. Marcus's voice filled the room. "Once she is in that facility, we will make sure she gets the right medication. She will not last 6 months. You were not just planning to rob me. You were planning to murder me. I gave birth to you. I raised you. I loved you unconditionally, and you planned to kill me for money." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus tried to speak, his face drained of color. "Mom, you do not understand. That recording, it was taken out of context. We were just talking hypothetically." "Hypothetically," I repeated. "You paid a deposit to Pinehurst 3 weeks before your father died. That is not hypothetical. That is premeditated." Then I turned to Vanessa. "And you, my dear daughter-in-law, should I tell Marcus about your affair with Kyle, the yoga instructor at the gym, or would you prefer to tell him yourself?" Her face fell completely. I pulled out more photographs. "Or should I tell him about the $75,000 you have been stealing from the family account to buy designer clothes and jewelry? You thought when Marcus inherited everything, you would have access to millions. You planned to stay with him just long enough to divorce him and take half." Marcus looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice hollow. Vanessa started to cry, but she did not deny anything. "And you, Dr. Harrison," I said, turning to the fake doctor. "Or should I say Mr. Harrison, because you are not actually a doctor, are you?" I showed him the photograph of him receiving an envelope of cash from Marcus outside a coffee shop. "How much did they pay you to sign false documents declaring me mentally incompetent?" $8,000! The man slumped into a chair. "They paid me $8,000 to sign some papers. I did not know it was illegal. I swear I did not know." "You did not know that falsifying medical documents to commit someone against their will was illegal?" I asked. You did not think to question why a son would pay you that much money to declare his own mother incompetent. Marcus tried to grab the phone from my hands. Mom, put that thing away. You are acting irrational. You are making this worse than it is. If you touch me, I said, in a voice I did not recognize as my own, it will be the last thing you do as a free man. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was 2 police officers accompanied by George Maxwell. Mrs. Thornton, one of the officers said, we received your emergency call. Are you all right? I am fine now, I replied, but I have evidence of fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and attempted murder. Marcus and Vanessa looked at each other in absolute terror. The fake doctor tried to slip toward the door, but George blocked his path. The police began taking statements while George explained to me that this had been a controlled operation from the moment Robert died. Your husband anticipated every move, George told me as the officers questioned Marcus. He knew they would try to have you committed quickly before you could react. That is why he prepared all this evidence and these legal proceedings. The fake doctor was arrested on the spot. Marcus and Vanessa were not arrested that day, but the police warned them they were under investigation for multiple crimes. When they finally left, my house was silent for the first time in weeks. I sat in my favorite armchair, the same one where Robert and I used to watch television together on quiet evenings, and I cried. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt truly free. That night, I called Marcus. Not to plead or to try to fix things. I called him to give him an ultimatum. You have 24 hours to return every penny you stole from the family businesses. You have 24 hours to cancel the contract with Pinehurst Senior Living. And you have 24 hours to confess the entire truth about your debts and your crimes. Or what? Marcus asked, his voice defiant but shaking. Or tomorrow at 9 in the morning, 3 local newspapers will publish the full story of your crimes. Or I hand all the evidence over to the district attorney's office. Or I use the legal powers your father left me to completely revoke your inheritance. The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that he finally understood who he was dealing with. That is impossible, he muttered. Dad left me everything in the will. You cannot take what is already mine. Want to bet, I replied. And for the first time in my life, my voice sounded exactly like Robert's when he was closing a tough business deal. Because it turns out your father was a lot smarter than you thought, and I am a lot stronger than you imagined. The next morning at 8 sharp, Marcus appeared at my door. He did not come with fake lawyers or commitment plans. He came alone, defeated, with his tail between his legs. Mom, he said, and for the first time in years there was no condescension in his voice. We need to talk. I let him in, but this time I did not offer him coffee or a smile. I left him standing in the middle of the living room while I remained seated in my armchair in the position of power I had earned. Talk, I said simply. Mom, everything got out of control. The gambling started small, just a way to relieve stress. Then the debts piled up. The loan sharks threatened me. I turned to cocaine to cope. I made terrible decisions. I know I hurt people. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I am your son. Does that not count for anything? It counts for this, I replied. Your father loved you despite everything he discovered. That is why he left you $50 million, enough to pay all your debts and start over. But he also left me the power to take it away if you proved you did not deserve it. Here are my conditions. You will call every loan shark right now and tell them they will get their money, but from your own inheritance. You will resign as CEO and transfer all your shares to me. You will work as a common laborer at Thornton Medical Supply, earning a basic wage until you have paid back every penny you stole. You will check into a real rehabilitation center, not a luxury resort. You will testify against the cartel as a protected witness, and you will personally apologize to the families of the 2 patients who died because of your greed. You will help them get the compensation they deserve. Every dollar I pay for your debts will be deducted from your inheritance. Do you understand?" His face showed humiliation, but also something else: respect. For the first time in years, he was seeing me as more than a harmless old woman. "I understand," he whispered. "And Mom, can you ever forgive me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "That is up to you. If you do everything I have asked, if you truly get clean, if you learn to be a man of honor like your father was, maybe. But it is going to take years, and you are going to have to earn my forgiveness every single day." 3 weeks later, I walked into the headquarters of Thornton Medical Supply, wearing a gray suit I had bought especially for the occasion. 50 employees gathered in the conference room, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I am Margaret Thornton, and from now on, I am the owner and CEO of this company." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. "I know some of you are concerned about recent changes. I want you to know that this company will continue to operate under new policies of transparency and honesty. We are going to conduct a full audit of all finances from the last 3 years. We will implement a bonus system based on real productivity, not favoritism, and effective immediately, the minimum wage at this company will increase by 30%. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, the applause began. Over the next few hours, several employees came to my temporary office with information about financial irregularities. They confirmed everything I already knew and added painful details. Marcus had not just stolen to cover gambling debts, he had also been overcharging hospitals and pocketing the difference. But the hardest moment came when I met with the families of the 2 patients who had died because of the defective equipment. I sat across from them in a quiet conference room, looked into their grieving eyes, and told them the truth. "Your loved ones died because my son valued profit over human life. I cannot bring them back, but I can promise you this: we will make it right. The company will provide full compensation. We will reform our entire supply chain, and we will ensure this never happens to another family." I cried with them that day, and I understood that my son's crimes had created a responsibility I could not ignore. That is when I decided to establish the Robert and Margaret Thornton Foundation for Vulnerable Senior Women. I allocated $50 million from my $400 million fortune. The foundation would help older women who were abandoned or abused by their families, women who had no resources to defend themselves, women whom society considered invisible simply because they were older. "I could not save my son," I told George when I signed the papers, "but maybe I can save someone else's mother." 6 months later, the foundation had already helped 250 women. On the night of the launch event, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror wearing a gold dress. Not because it was expensive, but because it was the color of strength, the color of the power I had discovered within myself. My phone rang. It was Marcus. His voice sounded different, more mature. "Mom, I wanted to wish you luck at the launch tonight. I have been clean for 4 months now. I am working at a construction site the company owns. We finished the affordable housing project you proposed. Seeing those families move into their new homes, I finally understand why Dad loved this business. It was not about the money, it was about building something that mattered. Can I come tonight?" he asked hesitantly. I was surprised. "Why do you want to come?" "Because I am proud of you," he said, and I heard real emotion in his voice. "Because for 28 years, I thought you were just my mom. Now I realize you are Margaret Thornton, an extraordinary woman who happens to be my mother." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "You can come," I finally said, "but as a guest, not as privileged family." The launch event was held in the ballroom of Charlotte's most elegant hotel. Over 400 people attended: business leaders, politicians, social workers, and especially older women who had found a second chance through our foundation. Behind the podium hung a giant photograph of Robert and me on our wedding day. Marcus sat in the back, humble, not demanding attention. When it was time for my speech, I walked to the podium feeling more alive than I had in years. 7 months ago, I began. I was a 69-year-old widow who thought her life had ended with her husband's death. But I discovered that life can begin at any age if we have the courage to make hard decisions. I discovered that being 69 years old does not disqualify me from starting a new career, a new mission, a new version of myself. The applause grew into a standing ovation. This foundation exists because I learned that forgiveness is not something you give away. It is something that is earned, and second chances are powerful, but only when they are accompanied by real change. I told them the story of a 72-year-old woman whose children had sold her house while she was in the hospital. That woman now has a decent apartment, legal support, and a part-time job at our foundation helping other women. Because it turns out that at 72, she still had so much to offer the world. She just needed someone to notice. When I stepped down from the podium, Marcus approached me timidly. "Mom," he said with tears on his cheeks, "I want to apologize. Not just for the money or the plan to have you committed. I want to apologize for not seeing you for 28 years, for treating you like you were just my mom instead of recognizing the incredible woman you have always been." I looked at him for a long moment. "Forgiveness is earned with time and actions," I said, "but respect, you have already earned that. You came here tonight expecting no privileges. You sat in the back without demanding attention. That tells me you are becoming the man your father hoped you would be." For the first time in 7 months, I hugged my son. Not as the mother who automatically forgives, but as the strong woman who recognizes genuine growth in another person. 1 year after that infamous day in the lawyer's office, I find myself sitting in the garden of my house in Myers Park. The same house Marcus once wanted to sell to lock me away. But everything has changed. The garden is more beautiful than ever because I now have time to tend it myself. Marcus got out of rehabilitation 6 months ago and has stayed clean ever since. He now works at the foundation, helping other recovering addicts. His salary is modest, but he tells me it is the first money he has ever earned that makes him truly proud. "Mom," he said last week, "I never thought helping other people could fill the void I was trying to fill with cocaine." After a year working as a laborer, I promoted him to supervisor because the other workers respected his transformation. But the biggest change was not in my son. It was in me. I am now the CEO of 4 thriving companies. I am the founder of an organization that has helped over 600 older women reclaim their dignity. I am a 70-year-old woman living the most exciting and productive decade of my life. The foundation has expanded beyond my wildest dreams. We now have 3 shelters, a free legal aid program, a job training center, and a microloan program. Last week, a 65-year-old woman opened her own bakery with one of our loans. When she cut the ribbon, she cried with joy because she finally felt useful and capable again. Marcus comes for lunch every Sunday now, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely enjoys my company. Have I forgiven him completely? Forgiveness, I have discovered, is not an event but a process. Every day I see him treat people with respect. I forgive his past a little more. But more important than forgiving him, I have learned to forgive myself for being invisible for so many years. The dusty envelope I received that day sits on my desk. It no longer contains just the bank account number that changed my life. Now it holds letters from women we have helped, photographs of project openings, newspaper clippings about our achievements. It has become a symbol of transformation, of second chances, of the beauty that can arise from the ashes of humiliation. If I could go back and speak to the Margaret who walked out of that office crying 1 year ago, I would tell her this: do not cry for what you have lost. Celebrate what you are about to gain. Do not cling to the invisible woman you were. Free yourself to become the powerful woman you always had inside you. The pain you feel is the birth pang of a new life, and that new life will be more beautiful than you ever dared to dream. And to you, dear listeners, who have heard my story to the end, I ask, how many times in your lives have you accepted being invisible when you deserve to be seen? How many times have you accepted crumbs when you deserved banquets? My story is not just about an unexpected inheritance or a dysfunctional family. It is about the moment we decide to stop surviving and start truly living. It is about realizing that it is never too late to write a new chapter of our lives, because it turns out that the best years of our lives can be ahead of us, not behind us, if we have the courage to claim our power and use it for something bigger than ourselves.